But we weren't really looking at the people that were teaching these online classes, what they thought of online education. We weren't looking at necessarily, I don't know, we were kind of lumping online education into this one big pile. And there's everything from diploma mills to MOOCs to everything in between. So what I was really looking at are the traditional, what you would think of as online courses. A lot of them are the for-profits like the University of Phoenix and the Ashford Universities and those type of things. But definitely not looking at Harvard, not looking at diploma mills here. And and they were accredited universities that offered online courses, and they could offer traditional as well. The thing that happened with online education is, in the past, it's a supply and demand thing. Think about it. There was this demand that nobody was meeting. So the University of Phoenixes of the world came in and they filled this great need. Well, at the beginning, when people used to ask me, well, what do you do? And I'm an online professor. Oh, that's kind of cool. They're interested. What is that? But then you get some movies and things out there. You've got Vince Vaughn saying he's got a University of Phoenix online degree that's like a Harvard degree, right? Kind of jokes, and then people start to maybe think maybe it's not so good. Well, then the MOOCs come out, become very popular, and everybody's thinking, well, maybe online's not so bad. And the Arizona State Universities and the Harvards of the world, everybody's offering online courses. So you've got a change in who's doing it and the perception of it. So I think it's really important to look at why I wanted to do this research, because these instructors, a lot of adjuncts are hired to create curriculum. They're the first line of contact with the student. They're just a very important part of this puzzle. And the degrees now, we want to know, do employers value degrees? What's the future going to be? Are we going to even have degrees? Or is it going to be Uberized, where everything's completely different than what we're used to seeing? That maybe everything will be in apps, and maybe you'll do it a la carte from different universities, not even get a degree. So there's a lot of changes that are in store, and I think it's really important to kind of look at our perceptions now and take a look at what we think of in terms of quality and what's out there. And the research I did found that students were generally more satisfied. They didn't find that that online courses were any more difficult or worse in their mind in most of the research I found. And they found that instructors were actually more accessible. I know when I went to ASU 100 years ago, you had to make an appointment with your professor. Maybe you got to see him a couple weeks later. I mean, everything's instantaneous. I mean, I'm on my computer all the time, too much, and students can access you immediately. And so students like that. So online is a really feasible way for a lot of students. I mean, a lot of people want that experience of the traditional experience. But I think in terms of quality, and for the people that need it, that want that ability, they saw it as much more satisfying, and they thought that the instructors were accessible. I think that the delivery method was found to be less important in the studies than actual content. So as long as the content was good, they were pretty much seeing that traditional and online courses were very similar. So my questions were to these professors, what were your perceptions of students' perceptions and of employers' perceptions? How did they think others viewed it? And I kind of wanted to see what they thought of that. And I wanted to see what they found were the benefits of teaching online versus traditional, and just general grading and different issues that went along with having that job. So what I did is I created a SurveyMonkey instrument, which was just had 12 questions, 2 of which were demographic, just to get gender and years of experience. And I put this in an adjunct professors group and a LinkedIn group. And LinkedIn's kind of tough because you can have a lot of people in a group and that don't go back and go and check their group that often. So even though there were hundreds in the group, I ended up with only 68 that actually responded. What I did was, I'd follow up, I get, more messages in the group, and then after a while, you didn't hear from them, I closed off the survey. But this was a very foundational study, just to get descriptive kind of information to see where to go with more research. So basically the questions would ask them if they saw things as inferior, the same as, or superior. And we looked at quality and just the opinion of their jobs. I guess I was interested in a lot of that just because I do it what they liked the best and what they didn't like. So asked them a few of those types of things. After they got into the LinkedIn group, there was a note in there asking them, please fill out this quick survey. You gotta say quick. Make it sound easy. It's really difficult to get them to fill it out. And they gave consent, and then I followed up as I said. So of the members that I had 68 responses. So let's just take a look at the demographics. Didn't get anything too surprising. The women outnumbered the men, but that's about what we see in online courses. There are generally just a little bit more women than men that do this. We had some pretty good experience. Less than 20% had under 3 years of experience. So I think a lot of people are looking for online jobs right now since the markets have kind of been changed so much. There's been so much people entering this marketplace that the traditional adjunct professors that work for the for-profits are kind of looking for work right now, and it's a different situation. So the ones that are in there have a lot of experience right now. As well, I looked at their opinion of online versus traditional because I just wanted to see what they thought of it. And it was pretty good news. It's kind of hard to see, but if you look at the middle line, that's the same as traditional, and then the top line would be inferior, and the bottom line would be superior. So we had a lot of them that really thought it was the same as or superior, which was a really positive thing to see. They had to have taught at least an online course and a traditional course to take this survey, so they have a perspective of the two. As far as the view of an employer's opinion, because you read so much about what employers value in terms of online versus traditional, they were very strongly showed that they thought employers thought it was inferior to traditional. And it's interesting because I went to A2, I live about a minute from here, and so I have a traditional degree, but I also, when later on, I had an employer pay for me to go to University of Phoenix. They valued that degree very highly in the 90s. That was a good thing. So I'm watching the roller coaster of how employers look at this thing, and the class is still the same. Things haven't really changed. A lot of it is perception. So grading, we asked about whether they would grade the same if they thought they would grade any more easily, and they said they would grade the same as traditional. Some of them said a little harder, a little easier, but that was basically the same. I wanted to ask them about rubrics, because rubrics are kind of a big thing in online courses of how they use them. Right now, I probably work for 9 different online universities, but I don't work all at the same time. Sometimes they'll give you a class here and a class there, different places, so otherwise I'd be losing my mind. But if you look at all of them, it's really interesting to see how they set up their rubrics. Some of them are really great, and some of them have absolutely no value because they're just very generic, and they don't even allow any adjustments of the information. So they're not very helpful in my opinion. So I did ask if they're set up well, if they use them regularly, and how they do it. So most of them said they're set up well, they use them regularly. Then they said they are not set up well, but they use them because they're required, is the second line. The third is they are provided, they're not provided, so they create their own. So they're either creating their own or they're using their ones that are created well for most of the cases. Very few of them were not using rubrics, which was good to see that they're using them, but I personally would like to see better rubrics created in the schools for which I've been working. As far as expectations on the students' part, they think that students expect to have easier grades. And I've seen a lot of bullying by students of professors. They kind of all expect to get a 4.0 for some reason. I'm not really sure where that came from. I mean, there's a lot in the news, about millennials and younger generations getting rewards for maybe not doing, as what we used to be more competitive if I'm a boomer. So, we used to have to fight it out. But I think they're expecting to get really good grades now, and I think they're feeling this. Now, this doesn't tell me if they see the same thing in traditional schools, so I don't have that information from this study, but it would be interesting to see how much of the bullying that everybody's getting, just if it's generational or if it's an online thing. In terms of pay, this was interesting to me because for me, I feel like you can make a lot more money working online. It depends. See, part of this is some of these instructors may work for a traditional university and also teach online and have to do both, and they just see it as something extra. So there's parts of this survey that I would change, and in my next research I would add a little bit more to find out a little bit more depth here. But in general, they were saying they could make more money teaching online, but it was really close. It wasn't as dramatic of a difference as I thought it would be. But for me, if you're working on multiple different online universities, you're not driving, you're not parking, you're not doing all that type of thing, and you have more time to do research, you have more time to do other things because of that. So to me, I didn't necessarily fall into the category of what I saw here. I wanted to know if they preferred asynchronous to synchronous, and most of them did prefer asynchronous, which my students will be glad they don't have to take my classes, and I'm doing it at 4:35 in the morning because that's when I work the best. So I prefer definitely doing it asynchronously. The good news is they saw the future to be at least the same as traditional courses, if not better. And that was a pretty big group of responses came in for positive. So I was glad to see that. So they have a very positive outlook. I asked them the best and the worst part of teaching online, and so I start with the worst first. This is kind of interesting. They had time requirements, and for me, it isn't. I think time requirements would be more for traditional. But for them, that was one of the worst parts, and the perception of it by others. And it's hard not to think with all the jokes and the things out there, that they say about online, like that would be the case, which is sad to me because I've taken different courses in online traditional, and we used to call it distance education, even correspondence. I could remember taking, God, I'm aging myself, but there are so many different ways, and I have to say that the content was the same. So it's perception. The best part they found was the virtual interaction. They did like that, and which was interesting because when I looked at the research, a lot of instructors were worried about teaching online because they thought they might not have that interaction that they want to have with their students. And a lot of them find that to be the best part. And the time requirements was another thing that they found to be the best part. So basically, we looked at students' expectations, employers' views, and whether, perceptions of each of these groups. They pretty much graded equally using the rubrics, and they had an opportunity for more income in general. They preferred the asynchronous, and these are the best and the worst parts. The best part I thought was that they saw it as an optimistic future. So the biggest problem I see with, there's so much I would change in this. This was just a really quick foundational study. I wasn't trying to cure anything with this. But I really just saw such a gap in the literature that there isn't anything about this. So I thought I'll just do just a quick little foundational study just to see what's out there. And I think, there's so much you could do. Because each of the universities may be so different, and just the ones I work for are different, especially time requirements. I mean, I have one university, you have to spend a day setting up the class. I have another one takes 5 minutes setting up the class. And they're not all similar in that respect. And if you're teaching math and you're teaching management, it's a little bit different as to whether students are going to like it or the perception of it, of how hard it is, and that kind of thing. So this instrument was limited. I think I would go with, of course, the larger group. I would like to know more about the courses that they teach and what type of universities they teach, for which they teach. And I think that there's a lot of qualitative possibilities because I really want to know why on a lot of these things. And I don't know if you're going to get what you really want out of this kind of an instrument. But I think that there's a lot more research that can be done because they say online is in its infancy. It's been around for a while. And I guess you could say it's in its infancy, but it's growing. And I think that instructors do have a positive view of the future, which is a really good thing. They're the main point of contact and a lot of times with curriculum development. They're the ones that this main point of contact for the student. So what they think matters and how they're developing these courses matter, because if these students, the big thing is if they're not getting a degree that's worth anything when they get out, a lot of it falls back on whether they did a good job creating it in the first place. So we need to look at it from all aspects. So I just think that I want to improve the perception for the students' success, so that when they do get a degree, that it means something when they get out there. So I thought I would just take just the rest of the time just to answer any questions. First of all, how many of you guys teach online? All of you?
I do.
You do